Hi, my name is Josh Moore, Precision Ag Consultant with Crystal Valley, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about soybeans and more specifically some of the top factors that we found from the 2020 growing season. As far as different factors that played key roles, we saw that variety had a huge impact as well as fertility. Some other things that came in big were seed treatments, population, planting date, and fungicide. So what we have here is the average yield by variety from our replicated soybean plots. We had these placed all across our territory with 26 different varieties throughout the plot. From the highest yielding variety to the lowest yielding variety, we saw an 8 bushel an acre difference. So this can be a huge factor to consider when planting. So making sure that you're keeping an eye on your field's history and soil fertility are very important factors among other things to consider when deciding what variety to place where. So sitting down, whether that be with a local agronomist or consultant of some sorts, to predetermine a plan, it can be very important. So on this slide, we have a soybean phosphorus and potassium fertility study that we've been working on the last couple of years. And our goal is to kind of compare a university recommendation to what we would actually recommend. So on the far left, we have the university recommendations, and that was spread 2 years before the corn was grown. And then in the middle, we have a Crystal Decisions recommendation. And that's on a 1-year spread, so that's where the $39 per acre cost comes in. And then on the far right, we wanted to test it in a high fertility program. So this is an area that we had with manure history. As you can see, having that fertility right there that year actually showed some returns when comparing the university recommendation to the Crystal Decisions recommendation. And there was actually a $7.30 return. And then when you look at where the manure history was, there was an even higher return. So compared to the university, there was a 7.5 bushel increase and $43.50 net return. And that was calculated at $11 per bushel. So now I want to talk a little bit about seed treatments and how your planting date can affect how you grow your soybeans in your operation. During our planting date study, we went out the first time on April 7th, and we had 4 different treatments that we had out there. So we had Alivo, Saltro, Cruiser Max Vibrance, and then an untreated pass. And if you look at the picture on the far right, there's actually an area where there was less emergence. Mid-season, we could see there was less emergence, some lodging, and that was actually where the untreated pass was on April 7th. And you could see that all the way through until harvest, where there just didn't look like it performed well, and that actually showed in the yield results. So as you can see from this slide, especially earlier on that April 7th planting date, there's a very large yield return from treating your beans. Later on in season, it didn't seem to have quite as much of a significance. But what we found from our planting date studies was that our May 2nd planting date came back with the highest return at 3.5 bushels on average, higher. And that's kind of what we saw, I guess, throughout our territory. It was kind of late April, early May was kind of the peak of when we saw returns at their highest. Here we have the average yield of replicated seed treatments. This took place in Nicollet at a research site up there. As you can see, Alivo came in at the top with 67.3 bushels, and that was a 5.5 bushel increase over the untreated seed. So this slide kind of really shows how important seed treatment can be. Saltro came in at 64.9 bushels, and Cruiser Max came in right behind that. The next thing I want to talk about is fungicide in our soybeans. And throughout our territory, as far as trials went, we didn't see quite as much of a response as we have in years past. I think a lot of that had to do with the growing conditions that we had. We didn't have a lot of limiting factors. And that led to some lower responses to fungicide. As you can see in these pictures, we had 3 strips of Miravis Neo on the outside, and then 1 in the middle, and then 2 untreated passes that went in between. And you can kind of see where the 3 strips were, that the soybeans definitely held their color quite a bit more. Earlier on in season, you could see the difference, as well as later on, closer towards harvest. Here are the yield results from that Miravis Neo study up at Nicollet. And it came back, and it was a 3.3 bushel return that we found. So keeping that soybean plant growing later on in the year. Like I said, it didn't. We didn't have quite as high of returns as some people had initially thought, but we did still come back with a 3.3 bushel return. So being able to pay for inputs as well as a little bit added return. Finally, when we were out at Farm America harvesting our research plot, we decided to do an aerial study on an auger head, and we actually found that there was a 2.5 bushel return when the aerial was turned on, and it also led to some increased productivity. So we actually increased from 2.2 miles per hour up to 3.5 miles an hour. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more episodes.